Welcome to FUNC YOU UP, the podcast that gives you the best of functional medicine, nutrition, and wellness in 8 minutes or less.
Hello, everyone. You're listening to FUNC YOU UP. My name is Samantha Wineke. I'm a functional medicine health coach.
And this is Michelle Miller, clinical nutritionist.
Today's topic is acid reflux. This is a common complaint that a lot of our clients come in for. So we want to make sure we describe some of the root causes of why this might be happening. Michelle, can you describe for us, what does acid reflux typically feel like?
Yeah, so this can manifest slightly differently from person to person. I would say, classically speaking, acid reflux is kind of this burning coming up the esophagus. Can give you this sensation sometimes of pressure in the chest. And sometimes people even feel like they're having regurgitation of some sort too, up even into the lower throat and even into the upper mouth channels. So kind of this like burning pressure that's happening. It's very uncomfortable. It's not fun to live with, which is why a lot of individuals are prescribed proton pump inhibitors or PPIs or the purple pill, Nexium. You might be familiar with some of these because it is such an uncomfortable feeling to live with. You kind of just feeling like nothing's digesting, nothing's going down. You kind of have this constant pressure and burning, which I can't blame them. Who wants to live with that? But I think our goal is always, what is the root problem? Why is this actually happening? We know it's not from a deficiency of this purple pill, right? So how do we get to this root of the cause and kind of resolve this for the body?
Yeah, so we can go ahead and go through a couple of those reasons. So there's one that's common for people is if they eat right before bed, they'll lay down and they'll have that feeling. Another is if they eat too much. So if their stomach's already full, but then they continue to eat, they'll feel like food starts coming up. If you have some extra weight, it can push your stomach up.
Mm-hmm.
And chronic stress is a huge one,
That's
right?
A big one.
Yeah. So then you have those nerves in the stomach and your body can't properly digest all the nutrients from the food.
And I will kind of pause to there and say, that's a huge risk of having acid reflux. Not only is there a risk of breaking down and degrading the lining of the upper, esophageal lining, but also that you're not able to digest and absorb your nutrients. Let's say you're having this perfect diet, but you have acid reflux. It's a really good sign you might not be able to even absorb all the vitamins and minerals from the foods you're eating.
Yeah, definitely. And then also magnesium, right? So this is stress again, and then stress can sometimes cause those depleted levels of magnesium.
Yeah, I'm sure with a number of other nutrients, but magnesium is such an important one because it does help the muscles to relax. So there's this sphincter that's at the kind of area between the esophagus and the stomach, if you will. And that really helps to kind of close off from, food going down into the stomach and making sure that food doesn't come back up. So what happens with acid reflux is there's some issues with that sphincter completely closing. And that's why some of that hydrochloric acid or those gastric juices kind of get their way up into the esophageal sector too.
Yeah, we're definitely I'm going to throw in that stress again. Stress is so important to make sure that you manage for the acid reflux, for both the magnesium and then not allowing the food to digest. And then sometimes people can have food sensitivities that can lead to this.
That's a big one we see often with our clients. I would say some of the most common ones. It's interesting because I think often if you're feeling this kind of burning sensation, some people might think like, oh, let me have a glass of milk. But often dairy can be a contributing factor, as well as gluten. That's another big one. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say if someone's having a current flare-up, like an acute, pretty intense flare-up of their acid reflux, there's definitely a handful of foods we would want them to avoid during that period of time. You can go through some of those for me?
For sure. So some of the common ones are spicy foods, citrus, tomato-based foods, alcohol, caffeine, processed foods, and then smoking can also contribute.
Yeah, those are the biggest ones we will always say. And that's an easy thing you could even find, Googling like what are the foods you want to avoid. Those are definitely ones that could cause, an irritation or trigger to worsen your acid reflux symptoms. But what our goal is always, really getting to the root cause of what's happening here. And I think so many people, when they're experiencing acid reflux, they feel like there's all this acid that's coming up, and it makes sense for them to feel like the body's overproducing acid. But what we also need to keep in mind is that many times the stomach's actually not producing enough. And so because there's not enough acid in the stomach, that's not there's not enough acid in the stomach to trigger for that kind of GI sphincter to close. And when it's kind of left open or there's room, then that's when you have an opportunity for those gastric juices or hydrochloric acid to kind of flush up into the esophagus section. So that's a huge area in, I think, natural medicine that we focus on is this really a case of too much acid or not enough acid, which blows our clients' mind, especially when we start some different therapies to actually improve the acid levels and they're getting better. Like, it blows their mind. They can't understand it because they would take Tums to decrease the acid and feel relief. But at the same time, we might be having them use therapies like apple cider vinegar or different digestive enzymes that would actually promote more acid, and then they're also feeling relief. So it gets a little tricky to understand, but we always like to help our clients understand it could be from either or, too much or too little acid.
Right. And you do need that acid to break down your food. You need that acid to make sure that you're creating that space in your bacteria so that it's killing off any of the bacteria or things that you don't need in your gut. The acid it's not the enemy here, right? You need certain levels of it.
You're so right. That good acid level helps with protecting us because it's killing off bacteria that might be, foodborne pathogens, part of the food we're eating, maybe in the water supply, things like that. So it's a protective area too that we depend on. It definitely helps with breaking down food, especially complex proteins like animal proteins. And it also kind of sets up the pH of the GI system to make sure that there's not the opportunity for bad bugs or fungal strands or candida to grow as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to transition into the bacteria in your gut. And sometimes if you have bacteria that can travel upwards to, or if you have extra yeast, things like that, that can be a root cause of acid reflux.
Such a good point. Yeah, I mean, that bacteria yeast can actually start this fermentation process. Typically, if it makes its way up into the small intestine where it's not supposed to be, that is when you can also feel not only like gas or bloating because the fermentation process is happening, but that can also travel upward and cause some acid reflux-like symptoms that you might just think are acid reflux. You might not realize it's something else a little bit lower in the GI system.
And that's something we can see a lot through testing as well.
For sure.
We do a number
getting
of
to
tests.
the root cause. And I would also say, Samantha and I always tell our clients, we want to make sure and rule out nothing, overly serious first and foremost. So if this is something you've been dealing for years and you've never seen a GI doctor, you've never had an endoscopy done, that's your first stop, because you really have to make sure that no damage has been done to this esophageal lining. You want to make sure there's no ulcers, there's no other serious things like H. pylori, hiatal hernia, other things that could be, medically speaking, very serious. And we need to take care of those before we can start talking about, ways to improve the acid and resolve those, the gut environment as well.
Yeah. So once you've ruled those out, let's go through a couple of the ways that people can change their daily habits to help out with acid reflux.
Well, start me off with some of the tips you will use with your clients with like mindful eating.
Right. This is a huge one. So many times I know everyone is so busy and we're eating in front of our desk or in front of the TV. We're distracted, we're rushed, we're eating on the go. So we're not properly chewing our food. And I know that's so simple, but it's not easy. So you need to be chewing that food in order for your body to release those digestive enzymes. And those enzymes are what break down your food. You need specific enzymes for proteins, for carbs, for certain sugars. So your body is not going to produce those enzymes in the right quantities if you're not properly chewing.
Yeah, if you're rushing, if you're stressed while you're eating, running around, you're absolutely right. Your body gets a lot of signals from your environment of when it's supposed to be in this rest and digest. So not only just food touching the tongue, but also you doing the process of actually chewing tells your brain, oh, I'm eating. Let me release all of these enzymes. And that's also why sometimes we'll supplement with different types of digestive enzymes. And also sometimes we'll use apple cider vinegar with some of our clients to see if that helps improve not only digestion, but the acid level in their stomach if we really have a hunch that it's an issue of low acid.
Right, exactly. And I think it's important, there are little practices you can do. You can take 3 deep belly breaths before you eat, right? And that just kind of puts you in that moment of presence and allows your body to process the fact that you're about to eat.
I love that. So we've talked a lot of different topics and factors that go into acid reflux. Hopefully you can take some of these with you, share this with your friends and family, because acid reflux is affecting so many people. And we definitely know we don't want to just symptom treat with medication. We want to get to the root cause. So thanks for joining us today here on Funk You Up.
We'll see you on our social media channels. You can find us on Instagram at Physio Logic NYC, or email us your questions at funkyouup@physiologicnyc.com.
You've been listening to Funk You Up. Be sure to like, review, and subscribe for more daily tips on living well.